Good day to you. I want to start our time together today by offering you a very warm, heartfelt greeting. I sincerely wish you wonderful health and, well, peace of mind on this beautiful noon of March the 5th. It is a genuine pleasure and a privilege to have you sitting down to join us today. Welcome to a brand new deep dive on the Military Chessboard channel. Our mission today is to bring you up to speed on the very latest and, I must say, extremely severe escalations that are currently unfolding across the Middle East. I know that hearing about these global conflicts can often feel deeply unsettling, especially when we talk about energy supplies and international security. But having a clear understanding of the strategy behind these headlines really helps us make sense of a complicated world. Before we get into the heavy details, I have a straightforward question for you to ponder. What happens when a regional conflict suddenly threatens the energy supply of the entire globe and the major superpowers of the world are forced to show their true strategic colors? To help us untangle this incredibly complex situation, I am joined by our esteemed resident geopolitical analyst. I am very proud to introduce you to MC Morgan Jones, who has a truly brilliant ability to connect these complicated global dots for us. Now, before we proceed any further, I must explicitly state a very important disclaimer to you. The source material we are examining today contains highly politically charged actions and statements from multiple global leaders. Please know that we are here to impartially report the facts directly from our sources. We are not taking any political sides, nor are we endorsing any of the viewpoints or the military actions that we will be discussing. We simply want to give you the clearest, most objective picture possible of what is happening on the global stage. So let us begin having a look at the current situation. The armed forces of Israel have launched what is being designated as their 9th wave of airstrikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And the sheer scale of this military operation is, well, it is quite staggering.
It really is staggering. We're looking at a deployment of about 100 fighter jets.
100 jets. That is a massive mobilization.
Exactly. And those jets dropped over 250 bombs. They did not simply target isolated military outposts in the desert, which is what we have seen in previous smaller skirmishes. They went straight for the nerve centers. They targeted state television, the Central Military Command, the Office of the President, and crucially, the primary headquarters of the Supreme National Security Council.
The Supreme National Security Council, that is the absolute top of the decision-making pyramid.
Spot on. And what is fascinating here is the timing. When you look closely at the details, the precise timing of these strikes is particularly notable. The attack on the headquarters of the Supreme National Security Council happened exactly while Iranian officials were physically gathered inside the building.
They were inside during the strike.
Yes. They were in the middle of counting votes to elect a new supreme leader. When you evaluate the strategy from a tactical military perspective, it is a highly calculated move. It is designed to disrupt the very core of the nation's governance at its absolute most vulnerable moment.
Right. That implies they're actively trying to create a leadership vacuum before any coordinated countermeasures can be authorized. To help you visualize this strategy at home, think of it like trying to stop a runaway train. You do not just throw small rocks at the wheels, you try to remove the driver from the engine room at the exact moment they are reaching for the brakes. You are targeting the physical machinery and the human decision-making process, all at the exact same time.
That is a brilliant analogy. And the human cost to this operation has been immense. Reports are stating that over 787 Iranian citizens have died.
787, that is a devastating toll.
It is a tragedy. Furthermore, the military forces of Israel destroyed a secret underground nuclear facility located just outside of the capital city, Tehran.
So, looking at the board, we must ask what this means for the inevitable response. We know that the former supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, warned exactly 1 month ago that any attack on his country would trigger a global, regional war. And it appears that specific prediction is now coming to pass. Iran has retaliated on multiple fronts simultaneously.
Indeed, the response was immediate, and it was remarkably widespread across the map. The targets were not confined to one single geographic area. We saw strikes against the United States Embassy and the Central Intelligence Agency headquarters.
And both of those are located in Riyadh, the capital city of Saudi Arabia, correct?
That is right. Furthermore, there was a coordinated attack on the United States consulate in Dubai, which is situated within the United Arab Emirates. But the retaliation certainly did not stop there. The group Hezbollah, which operates as a highly armed political and military faction based in Lebanon, launched an attack on a United Kingdom military base located on the island of Cyprus in the Mediterranean Sea.
Cyprus. That is pulling European territory directly into the fray.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Iraqi militias targeted United States military bases situated in the nation of Iraq and the Kurdistan region. We even saw local civilian protesters attacking United States consulates as far away as the nation of Pakistan.
It is quite overwhelming when you lay out the sheer geographical distance between all of those locations. It truly is a multi-front war, spanning across continents and oceans.
Taking a wider view of this strategy, you can see that this is a deliberate method of stretching resources. The strategy of the Iranian leadership is not simply a direct one-to-one retaliation against the nation of Israel. It is a highly coordinated effort designed to stretch the military resources, the financial capital, and the political willpower of the United States and its allied nations across the entire Middle Eastern region.
By forcing their adversaries to defend multiple incredibly distant locations all at the exact same time, they make it practically impossible for those adversaries to concentrate their defensive forces in one single, strong area.
Spot on. This is the very definition of a proxy war, where nations use third-party groups to strike at their enemies indirectly.
Building on that geographical picture, it is deeply concerning to note that the conflict is widening even further as we speak. The military of Israel has now significantly increased their own airstrikes on the nation of Lebanon. They have also launched a brand new, extensive ground offensive straight into the southern region of the country. The capital city, Beirut, is once again suffering under heavy and continuous bombardment.
This aggressive expansion comes following direct accusations from the government of Israel that the group Hezbollah had fired rockets into northern Israeli territory. It truly feels like the parameters of the conflict are expanding rapidly.
It certainly does, but I want to guide our attention to an aspect that directly impacts the global economy and ultimately impacts you and your family when it comes to the cost of living and heating your home. The Iranian military has deliberately shifted their focus toward economic targets. They recently launched sophisticated drone strikes on the Salalah port in the nation of Oman and on the Fujairah port in the United Arab Emirates.
The targeted attack on the port of Fujairah is a critical pivot in the trajectory of this conflict. What demands our attention here is the immense geographical and economic importance of this specific location. The port of Fujairah is the third largest oil storage hub in the entire world.
The third largest in the world? That is massive.
It is. But even more importantly, it sits just outside the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is a very narrow, watery artery where a massive portion of the world's oil supply passes through every single day. Because Fujairah is located safely just outside of that narrow choke point, it acts as a vital bypass route for international shipping.
So if the strait is blocked by military conflict, Fujairah serves as the emergency exit door for global energy supplies to reach the rest of the world.
That is exactly how you should think about it.
And setting that vital emergency exit door on fire sends a very profound message to the international community. We saw the television footage of those massive oil tanks burning, and the global economic impact was entirely instantaneous. The price of global crude oil immediately pushed above $80 for a single barrel. This is exactly why a distant political conflict is never truly distant. It is something that directly impacts the daily cost of living, the price of groceries, and the cost of transport for people all around the world.
I reckon that is the most important takeaway for anyone watching the markets right now.
With these massive aerial responses taking place, what kind of strain is this placing on the defensive resources of the allied nations in the Gulf region?
It is placing an absolutely monumental strain on their defensive capabilities. According to detailed reports from the Wall Street Journal, the highly expensive interceptor missiles, which are required to shoot down these incoming drones and rockets, are being depleted very rapidly across the entire Gulf region. The allied nations in the Middle East are urgently begging the United States of America to supply them with more defensive weapons.
However, manufacturing and shipping these sophisticated defense systems takes a considerable amount of time. You cannot simply produce complex guidance systems and specialized aerospace materials overnight.
No, you absolutely cannot.
Which brings us to a very noticeable shift in the narrative coming out of Washington. Initially, the United States government pitched this entire military operation to the general public as a strictly limited campaign that would only last a few short days. However, those expectations have completely changed. Official voices are now stating that this conflict is expected to last 4 to 5 weeks, or perhaps continue indefinitely. President Trump and Secretary of State Rubio have been very clear and direct about their stated objectives. They want to permanently eliminate the nuclear missile capabilities of Iran and completely destroy their existing missile arsenals.
This narrative shift raises a vital question about the true underlying end goals of this conflict. Secretary of War Hegseth made a very telling public comment regarding the situation. He stated that while this is not officially a war for regime change, the, quote, regime has changed, unquote.
That is a very specific choice of words.
It really is. When you look at the covert actions being taken on the ground, such as the Central Intelligence Agency actively working to arm Kurdish forces in the nation of Iraq in order to incite a domestic uprising against the government in Tehran, you can see a strategy that goes far beyond simply destroying military hardware from the air. It is a concerted effort to destabilize the political foundation of the country from the inside out.
Adding to that perspective, President Trump, speaking directly from the Oval Office, made some massive public claims. He started that the Navy, the Air Force, and the air defense systems of Iran have all been completely disabled. Furthermore, he claimed that most of the future political leaders of the country have been killed in these recent waves of targeted strikes.
Those are incredibly bold assertions to make from the Oval Office.
They certainly are. So what does this highly volatile situation mean for the neighboring countries? The nations situated along the Persian Gulf are currently facing some incredibly difficult choices, and their responses have been quite fractured. To clarify for you, when we mention the Gulf Cooperation Council, we are talking about a political and economic union of Arab states bordering the Gulf. Within that group, the nation of Oman has decided to maintain a position of strict, unwavering neutrality.
Yes, Oman always tends to act as the quiet mediator.
Exactly. The broader Gulf Cooperation Council has issued official statements condemning the actions of Iran, but they have made it explicitly clear that they desperately want to avoid entering into a direct physical war.
That hesitation is completely understandable when you examine their domestic situations. These Gulf nations have booming, modern economies that are heavily built on international tourism and energy exportation. Entering into a direct physical war would be absolutely devastating to their civilian infrastructure and their economic stability.
However, not every nation is choosing to stay on the sidelines. The nation of Qatar has officially sided with the United States of America, and their military forces have already engaged in combat, shooting down 2 Iranian fighter jets.
That is a very significant development that changes the dynamic of the region.
And then we have the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to consider. They have strongly condemned what they call Iran's blatant violations of regional sovereignty. They have officially offered to mobilize their own extensive resources, and there are strong indications suggesting that they might soon attack Iran directly, fighting alongside the military forces of the United States and Israel.
It is a highly volatile, constantly shifting situation.
But I want to gently pivot our attention now to what I consider to be the biggest geopolitical surprise of this entire deep dive. Despite having a long-standing strategic partnership with the government in Tehran, the nation of China has completely stayed out of the military conflict. The government in Beijing has only issued public calls for an immediate ceasefire and peaceful dialogue.
This restraint is a classic textbook example of pragmatic foreign policy in action. Rather than rushing in to help Iran with immediate military support, the government in Beijing is actually placing immense diplomatic pressure on Iranian officials. They are demanding that Iran does not disrupt the global energy supplies, and they are specifically demanding that Iran must not attempt to close the Strait of Hormuz.
Let us take a real comprehensive look into the specific angle because it is absolutely fascinating. I know it might seem strange that a powerful ally would simply stand by, so I would love for us to break down the strategic calculations that are driving Beijing's decision to leave their allies standing alone in the cold. I understand from our research that there are 4 main reasons driving this decision. Let us start by examining their relationship with the Arab nations.
Certainly. The first reason comes down to simple, straightforward economics. For the nation of China, maintaining positive, stable relations with the Arab nations is their absolute highest priority. Let's look at the mathematics of the situation. China currently imports a massive 50% of its total global oil supply directly from Arab nations.
50%. That equates to roughly 4 million barrels of oil flowing into China every single day.
Spot on. Now, in stark contrast to that volume, they only import 17% of their oil from Iran, which is about 1.38 million barrels a day. From the perspective of the leadership in Beijing, maintaining peace and stability in the wider Gulf region is far more profitable and essential for their domestic economy than showing unwavering loyalty to the government in Tehran.
So if the mathematics of oil imports are keeping Beijing cautious, how does their broader diplomatic relationship with Washington play into this hesitation? I imagine that is the second major factor at play here.
You are quite right. The second calculation is that their diplomatic relationship with the United States simply matters more to their long-term goals. The government in Beijing is simply not willing to risk a direct, damaging confrontation with the politicians in Washington over the ultimate fate of Iran. This is especially true right now because there is a highly important scheduled meeting between President Trump and President Xi Jinping.
Ah, yes. That monumental meeting is set to take place in Beijing at the end of March.
Exactly. China absolutely does not want to jeopardize the crucial diplomatic and economic negotiations that will take place at that summit by starting a messy proxy war with the United States in the Middle East.
That makes perfect sense. You certainly do not want to start a massive public argument with someone right before they come over to your house to sign a major multi-billion-dollar business contract. Moving on to the hardware and the actual fighting, the third reason has to do with their military capabilities, which is a detail that often gets overlooked in the broader news cycle.
It is a critical detail. The third calculation involves the realistic, practical limitations of the Chinese military. The armed forces of China have not experienced any recent large-scale combat. They simply lack the modern, practical battlefield experience that the United States and Israel currently possess in abundance. More importantly, we must look at the performance of their military technology. In the past, China exported older models of their air defense systems to Iran.
And how did those hold up?
Well, during these recent intense waves of aerial attacks, those Chinese-made defense systems have completely failed to shoot down any of the advanced aircraft flown by the United States or Israel. The government in Beijing absolutely does not want to expose any further weaknesses in their military technology on a global stage. Intervening militarily and failing would be a massive blow to their international prestige and their future arms sales.
If your product is failing in the field, you certainly do not want to draw more international attention to it. And finally, looking at the fourth reason, we have to examine what is happening in their own neighborhood, specifically regarding Taiwan and the South China Sea, as well as some significant internal changes within their own ranks.
This is perhaps the most strategic point of all four reasons. Recently, there was a major, sweeping internal purge within the Chinese military, where 10 high-ranking, corrupt military officials were abruptly removed from their powerful positions.
10 high-ranking officials, that is a massive shakeup.
It truly is. The military in China is currently undergoing a sensitive period of deep internal restructuring. Taking a wider view of this strategy, China actually benefits significantly if the military forces of the United States become deeply bogged down in a prolonged, draining war in the Middle East. If the attention and the military resources of the United States are focused entirely on Iran, it allows Beijing to freely focus all of its own resources and political pressure on Taiwan and the South China Sea.
In fact, right at this very moment, the Chinese Navy is conducting highly assertive patrols in those Asian waters, acting in direct defiance of joint military drills being conducted by the United States, Japan, and the Philippines. To put that internal military purge into perspective for you, it is rather like a massive corporation going through a chaotic internal management restructuring. The absolute last thing the board of directors wants to do during a period of internal chaos is launch a brand new, highly risky product overseas.
That is a very practical way to look at it.
It is a game of global misdirection. While everyone is understandably looking at the fire burning in the Middle East, China is quietly rearranging the strategic furniture in their own backyard. So looking at all of these rapidly moving parts, how do we synthesize this incredibly complex situation for our listener sitting at home?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the entire geopolitical chessboard has shifted dramatically in a very short amount of time. What began as a localized wave of retaliatory strikes has rapidly expanded into a multi-front regional war that threatens global shipping lanes. The wealthy Gulf states, and particularly the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, have now become the crucial deciding factors in how this conflict will progress in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, China has clearly proven to the watching world that it will always prioritize its own domestic economic stability and its strategic interests in Asia over saving a Middle Eastern ally. The international alliances that many assumed were solid and unshakable are proving to be highly conditional when put to the test.
Conditional indeed. It is a very sobering reality to digest, especially when we consider the historical weight of international treaties. Which leaves me with a final provocative thought for you to mull over in your own time, perhaps while you're having a cup of tea this afternoon. If the major global superpowers are increasingly relying on proxy attrition, meaning they prefer to wear down their opponents through third-party groups, and if they are focusing entirely on securing economic choke points rather than rushing in with direct military rescues to save their allies, what does this actually mean for the future of traditional military alliances? Will the ironclad, historic defense treaties of the past eventually be replaced entirely by cold, purely transactional energy deals? It is certainly something profound to think about as we watch this new era of global geopolitics unfold before our eyes. I want to sincerely thank you for joining us today and giving us your valuable time and attention. If you found this information helpful and easy to understand, please do take a moment to like the video. We would also love for you to comment down below with your own personal perspectives on this conflict. And of course, please subscribe to the Military Chessboard channel so you will never miss our future deep dives into these crucial global events. Until next time, please take very good care of yourself and stay safe and well.